What's up guys, welcome back to the Gaming Careers YouTube channel. Today is one of those super exciting days where the OBS developers have released a major update. Version 23 of OBS has just been released today. Version 22 I think came out 5 or 6 months ago now, so as you know they cram a hell of a lot of features and improvements into these major releases, and we're going to be going through them today. Now we will be covering all of the new things that OBS have included in this latest build, but we're going to be paying special attention to this whole new NVENC pipeline that they've built. They've completely rebuilt it from the ground up to give you better performance, apparently better quality as well, when using your NVIDIA graphics card for streaming. So I imagine that's the feature that you guys care the most about, especially if it's going to help you streaming, lowering the performance hit on your PC as well as hopefully increasing the quality. So in this video we're going to be going through the brand new implementation of the NVENC Encoder in OBS, how you can get that set up for your stream to give you the best quality and as little of a performance hit as possible. We're also going to be talking separately about the new NVIDIA RTX graphics cards because they have a updated NVENC hardware chip on them that gives some performance benefits, but that's separate to the OBS discussion because the OBS improvements are actually going to work across previous generations of NVIDIA cards, any card that has an NVENC encoder chip built into it. So these are two separate discussions that we'll be covering in this video, and then finally we'll also be covering all the other improvements that OBS have made in version 23. So to be able to properly explain the new implementation, the complete rework that OBS have done of the NVENC encoder and why you should probably be using it for your streams, you kind of need to understand about how encoders work in OBS. And to start that discussion, we'll talk about X264, which is the CPU encoder that has been in OBS since the very beginning. So the X264 encoder uses the CPU to be able to do the encoding of your video stream, to be able to compress it and make it look as nice as possible before sending it off to Twitch. Now there's a whole range of presets available, but the most common ones in terms of streaming are very fast, faster, fast, and medium. The higher or faster the preset that you use, the less taxing that is going to be on your CPU. And a slower preset will provide better compression, so better quality per file size. The default when you fire up OBS for the first time, and probably if you've been using the X264 codec up until now, you've probably been using very fast, which is the less taxing on your CPU and also the worst quality compression. Now the reason that OBS's default is on the very fast preset is because when you're playing games and you're live streaming, it's not just encoding that your CPU needs to deal with. It also needs to deal with things like running your game successfully at a nice high frame rate for you to play at, as well as things like Discord or music or any other things that your computer needs to be running. Even stepping down this preset once from very fast to faster will really have a notable impact on your CPU, and really only good CPUs will be able to step below this very fast preset. Unfortunately for weaker CPUs, if you do try to step down, you'll either start to drop frames in your game, which isn't a great experience for you playing it, or you'll start to drop frames in the encoding, which isn't a great experience for your viewers watching it. It will start to look quite stuttery. The other options for encoding in OBS have been NVENC from NVIDIA, VCE from AMD, or QuickSync from Intel. And these are all hardware-based encoders that take some of the workload off the CPU, hopefully freeing up some frame rate and some resources in your computer for things like running your game. NVENC is NVIDIA's encoder. It is a physical section of NVIDIA graphics card that is completely dedicated to just encoding video. So this means that your graphics card can operate normally regardless of whether it is using this NVENC encoder to stream or to record. Now the reason this is good is obviously it is not using your CPU to do the encoding, so that frees up the CPU for running games. Now this NVENC technology isn't completely new. It of course exists on the new 20 series Turing cards, but it also existed in the 10 series Pascal and then the 9, 8 and 7 series Maxwell. In previous versions of OBS, so versions 22 and before, there were 3 main ways of setting up the encoding for your stream. Firstly, using X264 and your CPU to do the encoding. This way, video frames were copied from your GPU's VRAM that was already rendering them for your game and for your monitor across to your system RAM, and these frames would then be sent to your CPU to be encoded at one of the chosen presets, typically very fast, as that was the default setting in OBS. People that were using NVENC in previous versions of OBS the video frames would be copied from the GPU's VRAM, exactly the same, into the system RAM, and these frames would then be sent back from the system RAM into the GPU's NVENC encoder chip. And the final way that people would be encoding video is with a 2PC setup. This is really when you're chasing the highest quality and the best encoding of video. You would have a dedicated gaming PC that exclusively just runs the game, and that video signal will be sent to your monitor, but also split and sent to a streaming PC via a capture card or something similar. The streaming PC's job would just be purely to encode that video using the X264 CPU encoder and then sending that encoded video off to Twitch. Since you are separating the two PCs here, the streaming PC can have a lower preset or a slower preset, aka higher quality, because it's not having to try and run the game at the same time since the game is running on the gaming PC. Obviously, the major drawback of this is that you need two PCs. They both need to be relatively high end. With two PCs, you need at least two monitors, two keyboards, two mice. Also, audio just gets crazy complicated because you want to be able to hear your game and talk to your teammates in game, whilst also being able to talk to your chat and hear your alerts. So audio is a mess as well. So what OBS has done in this new version is they've completely rebuilt the NVENC implementation, where video frames now stay completely within the GPU, being passed directly from the GPU's VRAM to the NVENC chip without the need to be copied back and forth from your RAM. As you can imagine, this helps both your RAM and your CPU usage be even lower. NVIDIA are in fact claiming that in between versions 22 and versions 23, if you're comparing the NVENC implementation between the two versions, you'll see a 66% improvement in terms of how much more FPS you're going to see. So the system hit for your CPU now is around 1 to 2%, really, really low. Whereas if you're using the X264 encoder, you're going to easily be seeing 40 to 80% depending on the preset that you choose. So imagine what that's going to mean for your stream. If you are already streaming with NVENC, you're going to see 66% less of a system hit on your computer. So I mean, I have to offer a massive congratulations to both NVIDIA and OBS who have been working in collaboration on this, because it seems like a massive improvement for all of those people that have graphics cards from NVIDIA that have an NVENC chip on them. You're going to see just way less performance hit when streaming using the NVENC encoder. So over the past 5 months, I've been working closely with Gerardo Cabrera, who is the product manager of streaming at NVIDIA. Him and his team were kind enough to send me over a Founders Edition RTX 2080 Ti to test with this latest version of OBS. I took this graphics card upgrade as an opportunity to improve some other parts of my PC, and I did this whole new PC build on stream with some viewers. Now, the reason that NVIDIA wanted me to experience the new 20 series of cards is because they have also been making some quality improvements to the actual hardware of the NVENC chip. So even though Turing, the 20 series of cards, Pascal, the 10 series of cards, and Maxwell, some of the previous generations, all do work with this new build of OBS and have advantages for the NVENC chip, there's actually been hardware improvements through the generations. NVIDIA is reporting a 15% quality bump on this newest 20 series of cards when compared to the 10 series. So this would mean if you were streaming at the exact same bitrate with a Turing card, a 20 series card, and a Pascal card, a 10 series card, you should see a 15% quality difference. Now, I'm not saying go and rush out and buy a 20 series card. That's not the purpose of this, but I did want to make it clear that there is some differences between the NVENC encoder on the 20 series cards and the 10 series cards. Now, another thing worth mentioning about these 20 series cards is that the whole range of 20 series cards have the same NVENC encoder built in. So it doesn't matter if you're getting a 2060 or a 2080 Ti, the quality of the NVENC encoder is exactly the same. Now, it was pretty common knowledge that the previous implementation of NVENC on the 10 series card was pretty similar to that of X264's very fast preset, the default preset that OBS gives you if you're using X264 CPU encoding. Now, NVIDIA are reporting that with the new 20 series cards, the NVENC performs better than X264 fast and on par with X264 medium. So this is, a really difficult thing to achieve typically with a one PC setup. You would need a horrendously expensive CPU to be able to get anywhere near X264 medium because it's such a slow encoder. It really does help bump the quality up. Now, just a quick note worth mentioning is that NVIDIA and most other companies, when comparing visual quality, use something called PSNR, which is peak signal to noise ratio, or some sort of similar method. And without getting too technical and starting to recite sections of my university thesis, which was actually in this subject, it's very difficult to assess the quality of a video in terms of PSNR, as the human vision system doesn't assess visual quality in the exact same way. I'll leave a link down in the description below to a Wikipedia article that explains in more detail for those of you that want more info, but for those of you that don't, I just want to say, take these benchmarks as you should from any company with just a grain of salt. In my personal testing, I have found that the new NVENC encoder in the 20 series chips definitely outperforms X264 at the very fast and the faster presets, particularly at lower bit rates of around 4500 kilobits per second. And when compared to X264 fast and X264 medium, the new NVENC codec, I found them to be very, very similar, often just trading blows depending on which frame of a video or which video game I'm looking at. So to summarize my recommendations about these new graphics cards, I would say if you already have a 10 series NVIDIA GPU, then just get the new version of OBS and use it as you were with the NVENC encoder. You're going to see a great improvement with this new build of OBS anyway. Whereas if you're on an older generation, or maybe you're moving across from AMD and you were looking for a new graphics card anyway, certainly the 2060 is coming in at a pretty decent price now and gets all of these benefits for streaming of having the new NVENC encoder. Right, so you're probably convinced by now that you should be using the new version of OBS and the new NVENC encoder, but how do you actually set it up within the software to get the best performance? Well, first things first, make sure that you've got the latest version of OBS. It should check for updates when you open it, but if you are ever in doubt, just head up to help and check for updates. So now that you're up to date, head down to the settings option in OBS and go to the output tab. Change the output mode from simple to advanced and make sure that you're on the streaming tab within this section. So the first and probably most important option, you want to change the encoder from using X264 to using the NVIDIA NVENC implementation. And just a reminder, you do need an NVIDIA graphics card that has this encoder built into it. So if you don't see one here, you probably don't have a graphics card installed that has NVENC. But for me, I've got two different options here. I've got both the new and the old implementation. That's just because I'm on a previous version of OBS, the release candidate. I want to get this video ready for release. For you guys, I would imagine that the OBS devs have probably replaced the old implementation with the new one, or you might have the exact same here, but just make sure that you're selecting the new one or the only one if you've only got one. I'd recommend leaving the next option checked, just to enforce that the streaming service encoder settings are right. If you've made a mistake, this will just ensure that you're using what Twitch wants you to use. Next up, we have rate control. Twitch has made it clear that they want people to be using a constant bitrate, so make sure you're selecting CBR here. And then for the bitrate option below that, I've talked about this in countless previous videos. Probably the best one is my OBS Ultimate Guide, which I'll leave linked in the top corner, of how you can determine what bitrate you can stream at depending on your internet connection, depending on what level of Twitch partnership you are. Are you brand new? Are you affiliate? Are you a partner? Things like that. I'll also leave a link in the description down below just to Twitch's help page on broadcaster settings that will help you determine, depending on the resolution you're streaming at, what bitrate you should choose. For keyframe interval, Twitch wants you to use 2, so select 2 here. Now for presets, there's a few different options. The NVENC encoder in this new version of OBS is just incredibly efficient, so you can set this straight up to max quality. If you ever do run into issues where your GPU is overloading on the encoder, then you can step this back down to quality. The only difference between quality and max quality is that max quality uses a 2-pass encoder. For profile, you want to set that to high. This is just the group of settings that the H.264 codec uses. High is absolutely perfect for streaming. Now look ahead and psycho visual tuning. These are two new options that you might not have seen before, but you basically want to have both of them checked. Look ahead just allows the encoder to select how many B frames it's going to choose between 0 and the max number of B frames that you set a little later. And the psycho visual tuning, this is an option for rate distortion optimization. It just optimizes the way that you're going to be using the bitrate and improving quality, particularly in moving scenes. GPU, this is selecting which GPU you want to be doing the encoding. Even if you do have more than one GPU, I'd recommend leaving this at 0, because the whole point in this new pipeline that OBS has built is that the video frames never leave the GPU. So if you're sending them to a different GPU for encoding, then you're kind of losing out on the benefit of this whole new build. So leave the GPU set at 0 and then max B frames, I would leave this at 2. You can go to 4 for slower motion games like Hearthstone and things like that, but honestly I think 2 really represents the majority of games and the motion that they encounter. So we have talked now for quite a while about this new NVENC implementation in OBS and why it's so great, but what else has been added to version 23? The main other feature is what they're calling service integration. It's basically a way of being able to link your Twitch account or your Mixer account into OBS and then bring some of the features from those dashboards into the OBS window. So similar to what we've seen with Streamlabs OBS and Stream Elements OBS Live plugin, but you can effectively link your Twitch account. You don't need to mess around anymore with getting a stream key, and then you can pull certain windows and arrange them however you want within OBS for your Twitch chat, for your stream information where you write what game you're playing and what the title is, as well as the stream stats where you can see how many people are watching you and various information like that. One thing about the stream stats one is that it's hidden by default, so you need to go up to the view menu and dock submenu and then make sure that you enable the stream stats. And these are all completely undockable, as is the rest of OBS, so you can move these things around and arrange them however you want. Right now for OBS version 23 they have done Twitch and they have Mixer integration. They have got plans for other services, so I imagine YouTube and Facebook in the coming weeks and months, but for now it's just Twitch and Mixer. Speaking about things that you can dock and undock, they have now made the stats window dockable, which gives you a lot more information about your CPU usage, your hard drive space, memory usage, what you're dropping in terms of frames and things like that. So I would really recommend having this somewhere in your OBS window arrangement and just keeping an eye on it whilst you're live streaming. They've also added some new audio filters into OBS, so a limiter, an expander, and the invert polarity audio filter. The limiter one I'm particularly excited about, so you no longer need to do that janky thing where you're technically using a compressor and setting the highest ratio that you could to act as a limiter. They actually have that built into OBS now. 2 awesome updates for people that have been using OBS for recording, maybe whilst they're streaming or separately completely for YouTube, is they've added batch remuxing from MKV to MP4 or whichever format to MP4. If you're following my advice and using MKV for recording, because it's just much more reliable than MP4, and then remuxing those recordings using OBS later, this is a really handy feature because you can just drag all of your recordings in and it'll automatically remix them all to MP4. And the other thing that they've done is they've added an actual option that will automatically remix a recording as soon as you click stop recording. So you don't even need to go into this batch remixing tool. It can automatically do it as soon as you've finished recording. They've made some much needed quality of life improvements to how you actually arrange and position and size sources within the preview window. So now if you hover your mouse over any of the sources in your preview window, it will show you a bounding box. And then if you click on that, you can then directly interact with it, drag it, change its position, resize it and things like that. That used to be a bit fiddly in previous versions of OBS, and quite often you would end up moving a source that you didn't mean to move. You were trying to move something else. They've also added like a little bounding box. So if you drag a source outside of the preview area, it's going to show you that not all of that source is visible in the preview. So you might be, either intentionally or unintentionally hiding something from your stream. There are of course a lot of other little updates. I'm not going to go through every single one now, but I will leave a link to the patch notes. Is patch notes the right term, or is that just for gaming? I guess like the release notes for the latest version of OBS down in the link description, so go and check that out. One thing I will mention is they have now added, if you click on the help menu up top and you click about, you can see all of the different authors, all of the different people that are contributing to the amazing piece of software that is OBS Studio. And I'm just so thankful that this amazing software exists for free, and it's literally used by thousands and tens of thousands of people all around the world. So massive thanks to everybody that contributes to OBS Studio. It's an amazing piece of software, and we're really so lucky to have it for free. I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already for all the tutorials that we make about streaming. And talking about all the tutorials we make, I would like to say a massive thanks to my patrons. These people help pledge money every month to let me do this as my full-time job and keep creating tutorials for you guys. Another thanks again to NVIDIA for sending through the graphics card and for just being in constant communication with me about this whole new OBS release. And subscribers, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.